is very controversial, and I don't have an opinion. I do think it's interesting. I think some things are interesting in my life. Like, I'm 35 years old. I don't have any physical kids on the earth, but I've had kids that have been removed before they came to earth, and they're still there. And I'm not, like, claiming that this is the right thing to do or not, and I'm not making an opinion. When I was born, I was a very unhappy child. I was so sad for so long. But I maybe had to, like, be born. I was born in 89, so I think perhaps I had to be born, but even as a baby, I was like, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to have to do any of this. And then, no disrespect to my parents, they're so wonderful, but truthfully, I mean, I think they would both say that, like, they should have never gotten married in the first place. And I'm not making a stance on any of this. I just am voicing what is coming to my mind. Is it controversial to a lot of us don't have kids? Like, a lot of people that are, like, furious for the spirit, like, a lot of us, some of us do, and that's interesting. But a lot of us don't have kids. In my walks with collecting these missing pieces, it seems like the biggest effort is to, like, make sure that, like, we don't have kids. Like, all the witchcraft is over fertility. They're like, don't have kids. Like, you can't have kids. And James Casbolt's remarks about, and I'm talking about, like, the negative side, but regardless, it's a Saturnian side of him. He has very derogatory remarks about pregnant women, and I think that it is because he's suggesting that a lot of women in the world are very seductive into making men have children, and that is a lie, right? That's not what you're supposed to do. That was not the woman you were supposed to be with. And I think that's where the derogatory remarks come from. So I was thinking about it this morning because I was imagining reality and how convoluted it is. I was imagining that it's so sad that he fell for the temptations of Haley Meyer and the Zionist regime in America. It's so sad that, like, he came to that, like, he succumbed to that agenda after everything that he had done. After everything he had done, he grew up in a crime family. They did crime for the British government. And he was the first person out of his family to say, I'm not going to do crime for this family anymore. In fact, I'm going to blow the whistle on the British royal family. And then not long after, he was roped into this marriage and relationship through seduction with Haley Meyer, this ultra-wealthy Zionist regime in America, and then they proceeded to create a baby, Dresden, which I wouldn't change that for anything, of course not, but it was interesting how they discarded him after the fact. Like, as soon as that happened, they discarded him. Like, as soon as the baby was, like, healthy and gonna live, he wasn't gonna die from not being breastfed or not given love. Like, it was like after the baby was happy and healthy, like, healthy, gonna survive. I have chickens, I have baby chicks, and it's like after a certain point, you can kind of, like, reel back on how much you care for them, because at a certain point, the chicks are gonna survive. Like, they're gonna be good, And a lot of us don't have kids. A lot of people that fight in the spirit, we don't have kids. And I see this on TikTok time and time again about people that want to war in the spirit, and they decide to make decisions, obviously, based on the fact that they have kids. I personally don't need to make any decisions because I don't have any physical kids here. So I'm not making a claim of any kind, but it is interesting. It is interesting that every relationship I've had since 2015, the biggest thing that these opposing groups had was that we wouldn't have a kid. That's what they wanted to make sure that, like, we would not have a child. And then you go into spiritual warfare and you see the world's falling to shit, and you wonder about seducing spirits, you know? You wonder about baby trapping, like narcissist baby trapping. I'm not saying that my recent boyfriend was all evil, but he has this thing about like having a baby. And I'm like, neither here nor there. I know that baby exists regardless, whether the baby physically makes it here or not. He exists regardless. He's not here. I know he exists. He's not here. And in 2020, when the COVID shutdown happened, I just noticed with my own eyes, people were having babies like crazy. And God was telling me all throughout 2020, monsters are just breeding monsters. Like monsters are breeding their own monsters. And I was like, that's like a lot to take in. So God kept telling me over and over and over again, monsters create monsters. Monsters breed monsters. Spies want more spies. They want more children because they want more spies against you and your offspring. So, I don't know the answer, but it is very interesting indeed. This is a very interesting, controversial topic indeed. You know, it had this, one cup, two bears, if you're watching. I remember you saying that you forgave your mother. Longtime listener of the channel, I used to chat with him, and he was like, I realized at some point I had to forgive my mother for bringing me into this world. And he was like, I forgive you for bringing me into this world. I forgive you for bringing me into such darkness. I forgive you, mother. And obviously his mom was like, what? I don't understand. And he's like, you don't have to understand, but I need to forgive you for myself, for bringing me into this world. Interesting, profound. I'm not saying he's like all love and light and good and greatness, but he did say, I had to forgive my mother. And maybe this is an agenda. So they're like, don't bring kids in the world. Regardless of whether it's an agenda or not, dude, it's happening. They don't want us breeding in this world. And we can like fight to breed in the world, but like, I don't know if that's not just like the singularity point where you're like, you know what, touche? Because I don't need to breed in this world. I know I have children outside of this world. I know they're here. I know they're there. I know they're everywhere. They killed my dog. They literally kidnapped my dog and fucking killed her. I don't think that she's just like gone and done forever. I'm not fighting for this world. I fought for this world for a very long time as a means to wake people up. But going further, I'm like, God can do it. God can do it. You want to kill my dog? Guess what? I'm just going to gain more esoteric knowledge about the world itself. And I know I'm going to see my dog again. I know I'm going to see my kids again. I know you prevented them from coming into the world. I know you virtually killed them, but I'm going to see them again. So I don't have an opinion on the subject. I think to each their own. I think it's very interesting, but I'm infantry line of spiritual warfare. In retrospect, you know, it is a blessing I don't have any kids to care for. In retrospect, it's a blessing that such evil is going to come upon the earth. I'm probably going to be grateful for the fact that I don't even have a dog to care for, to look after, to provide for, because perhaps things are just going to get that bad. But I do see that a lot of people are having beautiful kids and beautiful families, and I hope to God, I don't know. I do not know. I pray to God that their heart is in the right place, that they did not just have kids for narcissistic reasons. I hope that they had kids for the kingdom. I don't know. I have no way of knowing. I have no way of knowing. But it is a very interesting and controversial subject. Riley says, having kids tethers you more likely reincarnate coming back to the earth. Yeah, I mean, having kids tethers you back to the earth. Could I have done everything that I did having not been born? Probably. Honestly, probably. Honestly, I believe that people are like, oh, it's demonic when you channel. But I honestly believe I'm channeling that of my mother. I'm channeling my higher self. I believe myself because there's no other explanation. I'm a prisoner here. Every single lifetime I've ever had, I was killed or I killed myself. Because this ain't it, dude. And I'm not saying it's all in vain, but to have to come, like, to have to, like, bury my dog's physical body, it was like, I just wish she would have never come here, you know? Like, in retrospect, because she was, like, a child to me, and I had to bury her. And I'm not, like, in despair or sad, that's not why I'm saying this, but, you know, burying her body, knowing that her soul was gonna live on, I just found it to be kind of sad that I had to put to rest her physical body. Like, I just honestly would have wished that she was never here. And I was a very suicidal child, not because I want to kill myself, but I've always been I'm not going to kill myself, but I've always been very suicidal in my mind. My earliest memory is being suicidal. My earliest memory is like wishing I wasn't here. Wishing I didn't have to deal with these adults that don't know how to care for me. Not my parents. My parents are wonderful, don't get me wrong. But everyone else, right? Like, my parents are in the kingdom, but everyone else. And it's like, I look at my father's life and the trajectory that it took, and his life would have taken a very different turn if he didn't have kids. I recognize that my father accumulated the wealth that he accumulated exploiting other people, but obviously giving them the ability to have happy, healthy families. I'm not discounting that. But he obviously, if you want to accumulate wealth in the world, you have to exploit other people. And then they can bring forth children, obviously, to prosper. And I think that's just the way God would have it. It's very dualistic in nature. But if I look back on the trajectory of my father's life, I don't, and even my mother would say the same thing. And she's wonderful as well. But she would say, you know, I don't think that we were compatible. Like, I don't think that we should have ever gotten married. And she's not mad about anything. But, you know, in retrospect, this blip of time that we're living in like a blip of time. She was like, yeah, I probably should have not done that. She's like, because I was never, you know, well equipped to live the life that I lived so long as you kids were growing up. She was like, I was not, you know, she was like, that was not like kind of what I was like geared up for. But society tells her to be a certain way. Also, society told her to work. And she says, I probably would have been there for you guys more if society didn't pressure me into working. And, you know, there could be some criticism there because then maybe some people would say, well, you had the choice. But my mother was like, I was the first of my generation that was like looking at my mother thinking I could stay home and raise the kids. But when the reality hit, she was like, I couldn't stay home and raise the kids because I had to also provide an income. So it's not like anyone made any wrong decisions and, you know, we're all here and we're figuring it out. We're all walking each other home. We're figuring it out. But it is very interesting. And it's very interesting that it seems like I have the ability to become pregnant, but I cannot keep a kid here. It's like I have kids in the spirit, but they're not here. And that's no disrespect to anyone who keeps kids here. It's all part of God's story. But in the end times, I think, I don't know what. It's not black and white. Reality is not black and white. My brother had a kid and he's like the light of my life, you know? Like, I live in Texas, he's in New York, but it's like my nephew is like the light of my life, you know? Like, my cousins are having kids and I'm like, these people and their families and their kids are like the light of my life. And I think it's kind of not black and white, it's like gray, because like a lot of the world around us is falling, but then I look at the life within my family and it's flourishing. And that's a blessing. But it's interestingly contrast to my life, where I fight so hard for the kingdom that will survive, which is my family, probably, likely. But me personally, I haven't had the luxury of a successful relationship or a birth to come to term, like a pregnancy to come to term. So I'm not saying it's this or that. I'm just saying, like, there's a gray area, dude. But in the world, there's not a gray area. It's a lot of riffraff. And I'm not saying that is my opinion, but it just seems to be a bit of what's happening. So don't be mad at me for pointing this out, but it is food for thought and it is very interesting. So that's it for now. Check you later.